you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Aage, Nost, and Diana Seraphim.
Hello. You are listening to the show for the thinking global citizen. And it seems like it's becoming more and more of us. We have a fascinating guest with us today, but first I'd like to tell you how you can connect with us. My name is Aage, and I'm one of the hosts, and my co-host Diana is over in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hey. And for those of you that like to hear this show again, you can find us wherever we are archived, and try us on YouTube under Universal Consciousness Show. We are on Facebook under Universal Consciousness Show, and my name and Diana's name, and probably a lot of other places. I'm on Twitter, and also, of course, on kcorradio.com, the website, and look in the archives there, and you will find all of our shows in there. And also at the bottom of the page of kcorradio.com, there is a donate button. So if you feel like we're doing the right thing here, getting some good guests, and you enjoy listening to us, we would love it if you also show us your appreciation, to tell us that, yes, we like you, and then just go ahead and appreciate it that way. That will be very much appreciated. Gosh, I use that word a lot. We have Dan Brock with us. And he is living right here probably about 45 stone throws from me here in Tucson. And Dan's diverse experience with the multidimensional energetic aspect of reality began very early. He got motivated by his encounters of UFOs at a fairly early age. And the crop circles he got interested in, and also paranormal activity of just about any kind. And he found himself spiritually venturing beyond the edge of reality into the non-physical. In these alternative realities, he communicated and interacts with also non-human or non-physical multidimensional beings. And we can do that once we step out of the physical. And I guess that's where most of the fun is. And he has, he has a complicated education as a mechanical engineer and a nuclear engineer with the U.S. Department of Defense, and also environmental engineer for the state of Louisiana. But now for the last 25 years or so, he's been involved in filmmaking for Hollywood. In fact, he's got his name in the credits of the blockbuster movie Avatar. And he is here in Tucson, and oh, this is cute. One of his mottos is challenge all BS. And what he means by that is challenge all belief systems. And I think we should talk a little bit about that, because belief systems is just a little bit more than what we may think it is. It could be a lot of things outside of the norm. So without any more from me, I want to welcome Dan Brock to the show. You still there, Dan?
I am here.
All
good
right.
morning, good afternoon, good day to everyone. Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Dan, and thank you so much for being with us today. I'm very fascinating about your bio and the presentation of you. So let's begin by telling us, if you can squeeze your story, how did it all begin for you? So what was the turning point in your life that put you on this path?
Well, if we talk about turning points, I had an experience. I've had many experiences over my life, and have always been interested in paranormal. But I had one major experience, which would be categorized as a near-death experience back in the 1980s. And I had the experience of having my consciousness through a connection that I made with my deceased father, dissolving into the entire universe and becoming one with everything simultaneously. And this experience was just phenomenal. And I've always tried to revisit that experience as a basis for understanding the nature of who and what I am and the nature of reality, is that we are all part of one unity experience. And it's difficult for us to grasp that with all of the day-to-day things that we have to deal with. But it's something that we can experience even through others learning about near-death experiences, learning about the nature of our reality in the sense of we're spiritual beings having that physical experience. So I think that was probably the single biggest experience that I've had, and I've had many, that has turned me around and got me going in the right direction.
How old were you when you had that experience?
I was in my, that would have been, I was about 27, 28, which is interesting from an astrological standpoint, because that was right during my Saturn return. Saturn is a major planet in astrology, and I'm an astrologer as well as the other things that I do. And so I follow many of the tenets of Western astrology in terms of interpreting the patterns that exist in our reality and in ourselves, and the information that's available to us through astrology. And I was in my late 20s, and my father had passed away only about a year before. And I was just on a treadmill, getting up, going to work, coming home, going to bed, getting up, going to work, coming home, going to bed, getting up, going to work, coming home, going to bed. And it was just a pointless existence. And then one evening I came home and was lying down. I said, okay, I'm going to take a nap, and I'll get up and do my domestic stuff. And while I was sleeping, taking a nap at about 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, I had this experience, and it was just phenomenal. And it's still vivid to me today, and the sensations of having my consciousness dissolve into everything and having this unity perspective. It was phenomenal. Being a part of every particle in the universe simultaneously was such a phenomenal thing.
But what do you think that pulled you out from your body? What was the reason?
Well, in the experience, what happened is as my father appeared to me in an almost a dream-like state, and in the state of consciousness I was in and how I perceived it, it was almost like I was experiencing a dream, but there was this physical experience that went along with it. But in the dream, my father came to me with an enormous light behind him. And we had this nonverbal, almost psychic communication between us, which we'd had when he was alive, though we never spoke about it. He would say things, and then I would say, well, I was just thinking about that. And there would be moments in time where, he didn't acknowledge the connection that we had, but I sensed it. And he appeared to me behind the rail, like on the rail of a ship. And there were all of these people moving in the light, or beings moving in the light behind him. And he communicated with me. And then I had this experience where I just sort of felt myself dissolving into everything. I mean, it's difficult to comprehend, but it is something that if we begin to work at it, and through some of the mechanisms of Eastern philosophies and Eastern religions, they talk a great deal about the idea of dissolving your consciousness into a unity state where you're part of everything. And I felt like it was a gift from my father to get me kickstarted, to get me going, and to turn my life around. And I actually did. And that next year, I made huge changes in my life. So that's kind of the basic story.
And do you think you also brought some special knowledge from the other realm?
Well, the knowledge was an expansion of my, in a sense, it was the expansion of my awareness of understanding the nature of our reality. In fact, I remember the very first thing I said to myself when I woke up and I was lying on the couch in the house that I was in, and I looked up and I immediately thought, well, if that's what death is like, why do we ever have to fear death? And I sort of went from that, comparison to what I was thinking about as a conscious person, and realizing that, we are spiritual beings, and our essence exists far beyond the physical reality that we experience in this 3D reality. But there are so many things that we are subject to as physical beings in our 3D reality that it is difficult sometimes for us to separate what's beneficial, what's not beneficial, and things move in to become a part of us in such a subtle way that it becomes difficult for us to understand that, hey, we've been programmed, we've had some influence over our direction, and we've somehow separated ourselves from this awareness that we need to have on a daily basis about our unity existence, because we exist on this physical plane in a polarity, a positive, a negative, a wet, dry, hot, cold, tall, short, heavy, thin, all of these ideas about our existence is based around what is and what is not. But in reality, everything simply is. Everything is part of a larger reality that we are also a part of. There's no, there's the film, The Matrix, where they had a very poignant moment where this little boy, I think it was a little boy, gives the main character a spoon, and he says, just remember, there is no spoon.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things I learned about spoon bending. Is one of the first things that you think about is, don't think of a separation between yourself and the spoon. You are the spoon. When you're going to bend the spoon, that's part of that state of consciousness that you move into when you are attempting to do something, that we would ordinarily think of as extraordinary or paranormal.
Yeah, bending spoons is actually a phenomenal expression of unity consciousness, because in order to do that, you have to be one, or being somehow attached to the spoon. And I haven't really seen anybody, my co-host on the Broadcast Team Alpha show, Nori Love, have a spoon that is all curled up into a ball, laying on her kitchen counter. And she did that.
Oh, it's amazing.
I tried. I've never been able to do it.
It's absolutely amazing to watch somebody who is proficient at spoon bending. They've been able to get their mind into a state of consciousness that they can focus energy and bend spoons. And obviously the implication of that is, well, you can do anything then. If you can bend a spoon, you can bend a flagpole. You can bend the parts in an engine and make an engine work correctly again. You can do any number of things. This is one of those examples of how we are programmed to not utilize aspects of who and what we really are, which are powerful spiritual beings that have this ability that could be used in the physical to manipulate the physical environment around us.
Yeah, if you think about that for just about 4 seconds, if you can bend a spoon, what can you not do? Is there anything?
That's true. A big concept of this is, the idea of bending spoons still brings us down to physical reality and what we can do in our physical reality. And it winds up being almost like, at some level, the tinker toy of experience. But it is such a validation of our ability that it is, for many people, very important. The big thing is to go beyond the ability to bend spoons, to then see, well, if I can do that, like you said, I can do anything. I can do absolutely almost anything that I put my mind and my attention to. And working together makes it even with other people when you have a common intention is a big factor as well.
It taps into the universe at the level of where there are no limitations. In other words, if you got somebody that has a debilitating disease, you can just use the same connection as you do bending the spoon, removing a tumor. You can do I can't think of anything that can't be done. This is how I understand that alien species build spacecraft. They think it into existence. Mm-hmm. Now that's probably the next level up from bending spoons. But when you think it into existence, then it becomes real in the medium which you are.
Yes. And this goes to one of the principles that one of the tools and modalities that I've applied in my sort of 4 principles that I use for how to approach living the 3D, and that is through the process of manipulating who you are and the challenges that you experience through visualizations. So when you visualize something, you're accessing a part of your subconscious and a part of the field of information around us that allows you to change the story, to alter the story, to correct things that need correcting, for instance, in your subconscious. One of the big things that I present is the idea that there are, sort of 4 basic principles that I work with, and you can somewhat bounce around between these principles, but it's basically the first thing is to work on yourself, to get your own life in order emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And when you do that, you become a source of radiance and inspiration for others. And that's important to understand in the sense of the power versus force. We have a power in that radiance and being a source of radiance for others. But if we try to force things, we run up against blocks. We run up against the limitations of physicality. So the first thing I always feel like is work on yourself and clear the emotional blockages that are connected with who you are as a physical, spiritual being. And then, evolving, and this is a big part of our discussion, is to maintain your expansion by evolving a worldview into a universe view. And this is where that phrase, challenge all BS, and by BS I mean belief systems. We have to challenge our belief systems so that we can begin to take in different views of reality and different views of who and what we are and everything around us is into a universe view. And when we begin to do this, we transform and we can unify ourselves into humanity. And we can grow communities of like-minded people that are supportive, other humans that are supportive and open, willing and ready to act, to embrace the possibilities for life in this physical reality. And then once we're able to accomplish that together in this sort of balanced, thriving society, humans can create a new sovereign identity as physical beings that is accepted openly through the universe. And so this process of disclosure in a societal sense about the presence of other life in the universe and non-human presence is connected at some level to our sovereignty. How do we want these non-humans that we're going to connect with that are part of this universe of life, how do we want to exist as a humanity? We need some sort of collective identity, and I think this is definitely these 4 sort of principles. Work on yourself, become a source of radiance, then challenge your belief systems. Then once you've done that, you grow communities of like-minded people and transform what human society is like, even if it's on the smallest scale. You and a neighbor, you and friends. There's a lot of power in small groups to effect change. And this is where I think we can get lost in that bigger picture of what's going on in the world. There's so many things that are disharmonious to us that we hear about what's happening and we hear about situations, and it's very disturbing. But if we begin by working on ourselves and sort of beginning that process first, then we can better address those situations with our consciousness.
Yeah, and we got to remember too that BS or belief systems is a lot more to it than just religious belief. Because if you take it a step further, governmentalism, belief in government as a superior entity, that is a belief system. The belief that we have to die is a belief system.
It's a belief system, yes.
That reminds me of the guy that came on an exchange program to New York from China here in the mid-1950s, university professor, and he went out with some of his colleagues and got food poisoning and died. And he ended up at the morgue, and there was something wrong with his papers, so they called the ambassador and says, there's something wrong here because this guy's 154 years old, and that can't be. And the ambassador said, yeah, it is. Wow. And they asked him, how? And he says, well, first of all, he did not believe that he could ever die. That was the biggest thing. And then, of course, he only ate Chinese herbs and berries. But he did not believe he could ever die.
Yeah.
That is a lot more powerful. That belief is a lot more powerful than we would dream that it would be.
It is very much, and, there's so much of the nature of who and what we are that remains for many hidden from us. It's difficult to get to. And the true history of humanity and our reality. And these are some of those things that we have to address in assailing our belief systems. With an expansive idea of always challenging things. It's one of the tenets of science in the scientific methodology that the very first thing you're supposed to do is challenge what you understand. And science is a multi-step process, the scientific method, but you should always come back to the basic first principle, which is challenge what you understand. We can apply science to so many things in terms of our understanding of reality, but always challenge what you understand and never believe you've got it 100%. As a physical being, I don't think there's too many of us that have it 100% down. We're always struggling to close that gap, aren't we?
No chance of that, but I see we got a little bit over a minute left here. And we were talking before we got on the air here about one question that is one of my favorites. And that is, what would life be like on this ball of mud called Earth after disclosure, when we know and it's common knowledge that there are aliens visiting, there are alien species walking among us, and we may not even know it. And also when we start seeing the grays walking down the street with us, what would life be like? I want to talk to you about that.
Absolutely. We'll get into that.
And this is I haven't heard too many people talk about that. There's a book out there, that the day after Roswell. How about the one that is not out yet, but should be called The Day After Disclosure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a book by Richard Dolan and another gentleman called Aage, After Disclosure, and they talk a lot about the physical reality differences and the challenges associated with disclosing, an alien presence.
Okay, we're going to break. But stay with
great.
us. This is going to get good.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits.
After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
Do you love new music? Yeah! Then tune in to the Americana Music Radio Show, Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, from the West Coast to the East Coast, and everywhere in between. Your host, Charles Christian, will introduce you to the artists both old and new, the Americana Music Radio Show, where we showcase new local talent, as well as international artists, as well as showing you where Americana music is happening and who's making it happen, both here in the U.S. and around the world. The Americana Music Radio Show, hosted by your musical aficionado, Charles Christian, every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Toxins are everywhere, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the water we drink. In a world where 80,000 known toxins and heavy metals threaten our very existence, how are you going to protect yourself and your loved ones? Introducing Pure Body Extra Strength, the world's first colloidal zeolite that helps trap and remove toxins as well as heavy metals from your body that are messing with your memory, clarity, sleep, and focus. Don't just take our word for it or the testimonials from our thousands of happy customers. Check out the hundreds of articles and case studies on the National Institute of Health website proving zeolite's powerful ability to remove toxins. For a limited time, listeners to KCOR will receive 10% off their first order. To get started, go to trypurebody.com and enter promo code RADIO10. Again, that's trypurebody.com. Toxic junk is all around us, but now you can take back control of your health and protect yourself by detoxing with Pure Body Extra Strength. You'll be on your way to sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and feeling more energetic. Go to trypurebody.com right now and get started today.
Based on the concept that Plato simply called the Great Year, where evidence points to our world civilization being far older than we've been taught. The Emissary, Book 1 by Tamara Veach and Rennie DeFazio, embraces this concept while blending elements of fantasy, reincarnation, action-adventure, and ancient secrets all together, along with our real-world history, to create an epic tale that will leave you asking the question, is this real? The Emissary, Book 1, now available for 99 cents for a limited time at Amazon.com.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Aage Nost and Diana Seraphim.
Hello, we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we are talking with Dan Brock. We have been talking about the mysteries of mind and the mysteries of the universe. And we're going to visit another mystery here shortly. But before we do that, I also want, Dan, could you tell people where they can get in touch with you? You got a website, and maybe you also want to give them an email address, so in case people want to talk to you, they could.
Absolutely. My email address is Dan, D-A-N, at dlbrock.com. That's DLBROCK.com. And that is the primary way right now that folks can get in contact with me. I do have a website, dlbrock.com, but that website is under renovations, and I still, unfortunately, do not have it up completely, but it will be up shortly. So please get in contact with me at dan@dlbrock.com.
All right. Okay. Well, on to the next mystery. what would this existence on this ball of mud called Earth be the day after that is becoming common knowledge that there are aliens out there? Many of the UFOs are flown by them. They are walking a moment down the street and we'll never know it because they look like us. And what would it feel like going down the street and you see a gray coming up against you on the other way? What would it be like after disclosure? What do you think?
Well, there's an enormous amount of discussion that you can have about that. I think, for myself and for people that have pondered this question for a good portion of their life, the awareness that I have about the nature of who and what we really are is, at one level, I just want to yell out, "I told you so."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I have about it. It's like, no big surprise here. Yep. I've always known that, and it's always been a part of who and what we are. We're just like having it out in the open now.
I'll be using that one.
Yes, but the reality, and that's got maybe big quotes around it. The reality of this seems to be that they've always been here. We've always had this alien presence in a sense, and some levels connected with us, if not physical, which there has. It seems to be from all of the indicators that there's been a physical presence, but it's the non-physical presence that I have been most interested in, and that is something that's sort of always been here. All different types of spiritual beings. And so disclosure for me, I think, is going to be this opening up of the possibilities of connection of individuals, because remember, we're all part of a unity experience. When we see that gray walking down the street, remember there is no separation between that gray and ourselves in the sense of our spiritual existence. We're all part of that. This is going to be a big shock because for many people, because they're so rooted in 3D reality, in the duality, what is and what is not, the positive, the negative, all of those things that bring us into this physical world of awareness. But we're talking about now a broader spiritual world of awareness and consciousness, expansion of consciousness. So I really am looking forward to that. I'm not going to wait for it in a public open sense. I'm hoping that at some level it's going to happen, not as an agenda of any government entity or group, but it's going to happen from the non-human standpoint. They're going to reveal themselves in some level. But, I don't know. I think in many ways they've already revealed themselves, at least to a lot of us. So we're kind of, going to see how the rest of the world is going to catch up with this concept. It's certainly going to put some serious questions into many of the founding institutions that exist in our society about, especially when it comes to religions. And that has always been the concern, is disclosure of a non-human presence represents a challenge to the authorities that rule human society and to religions, and having any kind of disruption in our status quo is a threat. And I think that is the biggest challenge, is to look at non-humans in a limiting way as a threat. And I find this with the recent emphasis on that with the To the Stars Academy, and the individuals that are focusing on a military perspective on an alien presence. And that is, to me, in many ways, keeps us firmly rooted in a fear-based 3D reality and that duality of and polarity of the good and the bad, the threat, the non-threat.
Yeah, and that's not just a military, that's a government. The cult of government can only think of loss of control. That's their biggest fear.
Yes, yeah.
But what would happen to religions? I mean, what would a Muslim think if they see that there's hordes of ships in the sky and they are landing and grays are coming out? What would they think?
Well, this is always a big question for me, and I wonder about that. In all of the processes that I've come across in modalities and techniques and methods and approaches to dealing with, the belief systems that we have, a big part of the process is forgiveness, forgiving others for their limitation, for their reaction, for the challenges that they face. We have a tendency to move quickly into a judgmental state with others and how they are different from us and different in our belief systems. But in the end, when we really emphasize the unity connection that we all have, we have to separate that judgment from ourselves as part of the 3D reality that we're trying to leave behind. This is a great time for me to segue into a discussion about some of the tools that folks can use to help, get it together, to get themselves together, because it's so important. Our relationship that we have with ourselves and with others, is we're here to learn as beings on this earth, and we come from all over the universe. This is the thing about disclosure and the coexistence of humans and non-humans. We spiritually come from all over the universe, and we don't think of it that way because we have this physical reality that we interface with, and the patterns that we pick up, we mimic. So much of what we do is a mimicking of what we've been programmed to do. But we can get beyond a lot of that and get beyond our own limitations by using some simple techniques, prayer, meditation, yoga, being peaceful, talking to God, if you like. Those are all things that are possible as a mode of connecting with the non-physical, connecting with the spiritual side, getting in connection with nature and being good to the earth. We are here as stewards of the earth. This is one of the things that's going to relate to our being accepted in the larger universe of consciousness and larger universe of life, is being responsible stewards to the planet. I can't tell you how many times I go into garbage cans and pull out stuff that needs to be recycled. I don't know sometimes if I'm doing any good, but I just feel almost compelled, to do that. And is it a drop in the bucket? Sure. You look around and I see buildings going up all over, and I think, well, that's going to be in a landfill one day. That's going to be in a landfill one day. And you walk into the major stores and you look around, you realize in 3 to 5 years, everything in this building is going to be in a landfill. A good 90 or 95% of it. And that's pretty shocking, actually, to think about that. And we live in this disposable society. So, the belief systems, challenging goes along with developing new understandings and new belief systems and letting go of the old patterns and bringing in a newer understanding. So we can always ask for assistance from the non-physical, from our spirit guides, from angels, from guardians. If your belief system includes fairies, simply the light, you can get information and get support from those non-physical spiritual entities that are positive and beneficial for you. So here's some of the techniques and some of the things that I've picked up that I think is most useful in this personal journey towards expansion. One of the big tools I use is something, and Deanna we talked about this before, it's called dowsing. And dowsing is really the accessing on a physical level of the vast field of information that we're all immersed in. And it's sort of a way to penetrate into this field of information and get answers to questions that you have. People may think of dowsing and not know what that means, but in a classic sense, people used to dowse all the time to find water. You would take a branch, a Y rod or Y stem from a birch tree, and you would walk along the ground asking to find water, and when the limb would point to the ground, that's where the water would be, where you would need to drill the well. Well, dowsing is evolved considerably beyond that and over the years, but it is a really good tool in the physical world that you can use to get information. I carry a pendulum with me wherever I go. There is a website that is called Letter to Robin, Robin, Letter to Robin. And that website is one of the websites that's out there about dowsing, where they teach dowsing, and they have resources that you can get to that teach you the basic principles of dowsing. It's an excellent place to start to get an understanding of what dowsing is all about. And it's Letter to Robin. It's actually .wordpress.com. But if you just type in Letter to Robin, Robin, it'll come up, and you can download a PDF. You can read everything that's on the site and understand about, learn more about the process of dowsing and how useful it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, let me chime in on that one
Sure.
too, because that is so important. I have a couple of pendulums here that I even take it to the grocery store sometimes. If I want to find something that is fresh, I grab the pendulum and just put it over the groceries. And if it turns to the left for me, that's a negative. That's doesn't have the desired life energy in it. If it turns to the right, I pick it.
Right.
Simple thing like that.
Absolutely. And what I use dowsing for when I go into a store is supplements. That's and food as well.
Oh, yeah.
But you go into a store and it's like this bewildering collection of supplements, and there may be 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 different brands of one type of supplement. Well, which one is the most beneficial for you for what you're trying to address? You can use dowsing to grade those, and that's what I do. Is I actually say, well, this one's good, this one's okay, this one's much better. How many of them do I need to take? You can dowse that. There's all this information that is available to you. Just remember that the dowsing with a pendulum, you can use it as a sort of a focus point. The pendulum becomes the focus for the flow of energy that can go out, but ultimately it's like a pointer. It's like the speedometer in your car. If you grab the speedometer and turn it to 100, that doesn't mean you're going 100 miles or kilometers per hour. It just means you've moved the needle. It's the same thing with the dowsing tools, the pendulums. They're pointers. It's the body that is responding to the environment and to the question and the consciousness of the information that you're trying to access. Another big thing that I use is visualizations. Our subconscious is programmed almost relentlessly from birth with so many different aspects of what we are supposed to be or not be, and how we're supposed to behave and what we're supposed to do. And there's all kinds of traumas and dramas and difficulties and challenges that we experience that programs our subconscious. We can access through visualizations, and there's a lot of techniques out there, access aspects of our subconscious that allow us to reprogram our understanding of what we want to accomplish and what we want to be. So visualizing something, seeing it in your mind's eye is an amazing tool, because that's connecting you with the consciousness process of creating something in the physical. We have to go out into that consciousness space of the non-physical. We can use visualizations as a 3D being, and that will help us to manifest into the physical the things that we want to accomplish.
I do that all the time.
Yes. Here, and then I'm going to run through real quickly here about, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different acronyms for you, that each one is different techniques that you can use. The first one is NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. This is a technique. It's treated by many as a pseudoscience, but it's something that works for some people, and many of these tools will work for some and not for others. You have to find your own way through getting the information that you need and finding the tools that work best for you. NLP is an important tool to reprogram the subconscious, making conscious statements about how you want things to be reprogrammed, then affects the subconscious. There's entire websites, people that do training, and lots of material on NLP. Another technique is called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. This is where the movements of the eye become associated with, or are associated with, reprogramming of the subconscious and aspects of the mind where there are things that you are trying to correct. There are tons of specialists out there that specialize in using eye movement and looking at your response in your eye movements and reprogramming aspects of your subconscious. This may have for many people, a relationship to hypnotherapy, and it is in many ways a hypnotheric process. But please explore that. The other technique is called EMT, Emotional Freedom Technique. This is where we do something that's similar to neuro-linguistic programming, but the process involves tapping on very specific parts of the body. And this tapping activates our neurological system and allows a reprogramming of our neurology and our brain with the words that we are using when we're doing the tapping. Investigate that. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique. Now, here's one that really, really worked for me, and I absolutely believe in this one. It's called TRE, Trauma Release Exercises. And I took a number of seminars, had a number of experiences with TRE, and the gentleman who developed it, his name is David Berselli. He's based in Phoenix, and I've had a number of experiences with him, and I know firsthand the effectiveness of this. What this gentleman discovered is that there's a natural physiological process in the human body where the tremor system is activated, or tremor mechanism is activated, where the body tremors. You've seen somebody who's been very frightened, who's had an accident, has had an injury, or something traumatic has happened, and they begin to shake. Mm-hmm. That shaking is a natural process where the body is trying to relieve the overwhelming neurological imprint of that traumatic experience. And it is a natural physiological process. It's something all mammals do. And this man discovered this and came up with a series of exercises that you can do to artificially activate this tremor mechanism, which then can be focused to any part of your body that you need to have a release. And by release, I mean patterns such as old injuries, and it's belief system free, by the way. You could be Buddhist or Muslim or Judaic or whatever. You could be completely atheist. It's based on the human mechanism, the physiological mechanism, the nervous system. And so you can release traumas from past injuries, traumatic events. It's being used for military people for PTSD, for treating PTSD symptoms. All kinds of physical experiences. If you've experienced a fall or an injury, if you've had, now this moves into different systems of belief, but if you have a past life trauma that you're carrying, you can work with this TRE to release past life traumas, which I experienced myself, all kinds of things. It is highly effective. Go out and just Google it, TRE, Trauma Release Exercises. The last thing I'll mention is called spiritual. There's two different systems: spiritual response therapy or spiritual release therapy. SRT. SRT is the acronym for that. And this is the idea with spiritual release therapy. I'll speak about that specifically, where you're using tools that are related to a hypnotherapy or hypnosis type approach to getting to the spiritual connections that you may have that are non-beneficial, and understanding what you need from a spiritual standpoint by using hypnosis to get to a spiritual level of connection and understanding about what's going on with you. Because there are many people that, need or have a spiritual aspect of what's challenging them in this physical life that they need to correct. And this is another technique. And there's lots of practitioners and people out there who have the abilities with these tools. And again, that's, dowsing. I mentioned the letter to Robin, visualizations. There's a lot I can talk about with that, but we'll get into it maybe later. But NLP, EMDR, EFT, TRE, SRT. So those are all tools that you can use as an individual to begin to release things that you've experienced. It could be from childhood. It could be from any number of experiences that you've had. So I just want to get that out because I think, nothing seems to work perfectly for everybody. So it's a process of exploration. Find for yourself what works. Many people seek out naturopathic doctors as an approach. And homeopathic medications as an approach. These are different forms of healing techniques and modalities that you can use to heal your situation. But the last thing I want to mention is there's a gentleman that I've been a big fan of. His name is David Hawkins. And he had an enormous number of books that he's created on subjects of consciousness. And he developed a scale of consciousness where he emphasizes this transition between using force in the physical, which is sort of a lower consciousness concept, to using your power as a spiritual being in a higher consciousness concept. Just Google his name. David Hawkins.
I got his book on the shelf here, Power versus Force.
Yes, that's a critical work, and he has many books that he's written. I don't know if the gentleman is still alive today. He was actually in Sedona, Arizona.
No, he's dead. I think he's dead.
Yeah,
he has a lot of books.
A lot of books. The base. If you just go and Google him, you're going to come up with some interesting material. And guess what? He used a form of dowsing in the research that he did to come up with these different levels of consciousness in terms of understanding. So dowsing is quite an involved, can be a very evolved system that can be used in many different ways to get the information that you need in your life.
Okay,
so
we got 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left of the show.
Any questions you guys have about anything that I've mentioned?
Oh,
so much I know.
I don't even know where to start. But this is something that I think we all should start looking into. Start Googling it. Actually, don't even Google it. Just DuckDuckGo it. That's a much better one.
That's much better.
Yeah, and I would say for now, before we leave the show here, let them know again where they can get a hold of you to connect with you for further communication or what you do.
Absolutely. I do a number of different things. I mentioned that I'm an astrologer. I've found that astrology is an exceptionally valuable tool in understanding our mission here on this planet as 3D beings and understanding what our mission is from a spiritual perspective. So really consider astrology as one of the tools that you can use. I'm an astrologer. I do readings for folks. And you can get a hold of me at dan@dlbrock.com. dan@dlbrock.com. I also do a number of other different things as well. We don't have to get into that too many other things today, but if you have questions for me, please email me at that address.
That sounds excellent. And I see now we got 30 seconds left, so I thank you very much, Dan. This was wonderful because we went into a lot of different places behind the curtain, and that's where we need to stay.
Got to remove the curtain. The man behind the curtain, you don't even need the man behind the curtain. You need to be there working the controls yourself. And
thank you for being here, Dan, and
thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. Such an honor.
Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week right here. So we will see you then. Be good to each other.
This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense for very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming. A new earthly paradigm. A shift to universal consciousness.
Universal consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist.